Hey, good evening. My name is Austin. I'm with the Ascendancy podcast.
What's up, y'all? I'm Chris with the Ascendancy podcast.
All right, we're just out here to show that people can be vegan, can be against animal exploitation, and be normal dudes who are focused on fitness, finance, just living a good life, and really optimizing every sort of facet of their life. Our mission is to teach people that you can be vegan and you don't have to be like a far leftist. You can be moderate, conservative, anything of the above. Because really, this is an ethical principle that everyone should follow, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. But we're not going to limit our conversation to animal rights. We're going to talk about, of course, veganism, politics, fitness, health, lifting, finance, meaning of life, you name it. So, really, anything that could appeal to people who really want to get the most out of life and do it without exploiting animals. And I think one good place to start with is the definition of veganism. It was first coined in 1951 by Leslie Cross, and that's that veganism is a principle that man has no right to exploit creatures for his own ends. And that's a principle that Chris and I live by, and just putting it out there that regardless of who you are or where you come from, you can choose to respect all the beings we share this planet with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to start this podcast. And I think it's apt to start with a little bit of introductory into who myself and Austin are. So I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been living here for a few years. And I went vegan about 6 years ago now after learning about how horrific the suffering and rights violations are taking place in animal agriculture, as well as other industries that exploit animals for clothing, testing, entertainment, and things of that nature. And it's super important to me. I'm also an activist in my spare time with the organization Anonymous for the Voiceless. It's a street outreach organization with chapters worldwide where we educate people on the streets about animal rights and veganism and really hold people accountable and really try to create change. And it's really important to me to try to lead by example and, of course, show people that we can be normal and healthy as vegans and show people that it's really the right way to conduct ourselves. And I'll pass it over to Austin to talk to us about himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been vegan for almost 8 years now. It'll be 8 years on December 24th. Right now, I live in Florida. I did a lot of activism with Anonymous for the Voiceless in the past. Right now, I'm sort of living out in the middle of the nowhere here on an animal sanctuary, so it's pretty cool to get to interact with some animals that are rescued from slaughter every day and see them as individuals. Now, a lot of what I do is on the internet. I've conducted a relatively large following over several social media accounts that I use to influence people to be vegan and make that choice for themselves. But Chris, you mentioned you went vegan 6 years ago. How were you before you were vegan? What was your life like? What kind of a person were you before you made that change? And what inspired you, 6 years ago to change?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm 25 now. So when I first went vegan, I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. And up to that point, I never really considered animals as something to really consider morally. I had dogs growing up through my grandparents. So of course I cared about dogs and cats that I would regularly see. But when it came to other animals beyond just household pets, I never really considered their lives or how my actions might be harming them. So, I ate meat, dairy, eggs all the time. I bought leather products. Products, obviously, leather is the skin of animals. There doesn't belong to us. It's not products, but just never really considered anything and just ate the same way everyone else ate, had the same behaviors everyone else had. I loved eating pizza, sushi, bacon, eggs, you name it. I was just a standard person who ate animal products and wasn't vegan. So what prompted the change? I met the first vegan I ever met was this dude named Philip, who was a friend of my dad's. I met him on vacation, and it was interesting because I never actually met a vegan in my life, and this guy was super chill, super healthy, and he was funny, and it really kind of got the cogs turning, got me a little curious about what's going on here, and actually it turns out that he was an activist himself, so he would go around the world speaking to small groups of people and educate people about veganism, as well as talking about some of the health benefits of a plant-based diet. So I attended a talk that he gave just to learn more, and it really opened my eyes to how serious of a moral issue this is. And I really credit him with, sparking that change. So after that, I started doing my own research online, going to YouTube and learning about these industries that exploit and violate animals, and it really disgusted me to my core. And I couldn't believe that for so much of my life I was contributing to the suffering and these violations of these animals who are sentient beings with a personal experience of life, just like me, just like Austin. And it was just absolutely I couldn't wrap my head around continuing to pay for milk, butter, eggs, meat, you name it, as well as other things like leather or anything like that. It just wasn't cool to be causing this pain and this suffering to animals. So that kind of was what brought me around to it 6 years ago, and um, that's pretty much it. I'll turn it over to you, to Austin. Like, what made you go vegan, and who were you before you made that transition?
Yeah, man. If you talk to anyone about veganism, one thing they say is that my culture holds me back. I can't change because where I live, people of my ethnicity or my country, they eat so much meat, and it's against our values. But in America, especially where I'm from, where I live, people eat more meat than anywhere on earth. And I would say my childhood upbringing was everything aligned with that as well. Just a regular meat eater, etc. I, was fortunate enough to live on the beach, and I went fishing a lot too. So that was a big part of my life in the past. But when I was in university, I heard this word vegan thrown around a few times, and I never really like heard it before. I guess I was living under a rock or something, but I was curious about it because I like this concept of living and having this diet that doesn't involve animals. Now, at the time, I only heard it spoken about as a diet, but even that concept alone was appealing to me. So it was over winter break, like the day before Christmas, when I was 20. I looked into it. I decided I'm going to learn about this vegan thing. So I watched a speech by a YouTuber, an activist named James Wildman, that was really eye-opening. Like, first he was showing how there's these parallels between animal agriculture and this film, The Matrix. How everyone partakes in this thing, and it's so normalized, but the truth of it is hidden from us. And that was a great introductory film. I highly recommend it. The first thing I saw was, that, and second was a speech by Gary Yourofsky, the famous speech that millions have seen. That shook me to my core. His words are so impactful to me, and I knew even when I saw James's speech that I was all in, but when I saw Gary's speech, it was just incredibly impactful. And from there, in the same day, I then saw the documentary Earthlings, and it was horrific. I knew that animal agriculture was bad. I knew that it was violent, even under the best case scenario. But to see everything laid out in front of me in Earthlings, to see just so much suffering and so much blood, it was like this veil was lifted from me, like this blindfold was taken off of me to see the truth of it for myself. And even though I was someone who was a regular meat eater, fisherman, etc., I saw that these animals were suffering, and I didn't want to participate in that, anymore from that day forward. When I saw everything for myself and I heard the arguments against it, it seemed so rational to me. It wasn't even like a question of like, how am I going to start or how am I going to transition? It was just like, this is what I must do. There's no other um, question about it. It was so impactful to me. But when it came to Chris making the transition, once you learned about it, what did that look like for you? How did you go about it? And what would you recommend to someone if they were going to do it right now with the knowledge you've acquired over the years?
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. So what I would say to that is a huge resource to me was just going on YouTube and Google. These are resources that a lot of us use on a regular basis, but sometimes when you're considering a lifestyle change, you may not know where to start. So if you just type in, vegan recipes, vegan alternatives for XYZ, you're going to find 1,000 search results. Just kind of look around and do research. I also recommend reading books about vegan nutrition because oftentimes just the way like the school system is, we don't really learn anything about about nutrition rather. So when it comes to changing your diet, I think it's important to have a basic understanding of what nutrients to make sure you're getting. And it's not harder to get nutrients on a vegan diet. That's a misconception. So that's not why I'm saying it, but it's just in general good to have this understanding so you know how to properly plan the vegan diet. Because when it comes to being healthy long term as a vegan, it's really important to be eating a properly planned diet. So that's what I would say. Some books I recommend are How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. That one kind of goes into the health benefits of a plant based diet and the health detriments of an animal based diet. I also recommend Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. It's kind of a similar book in a similar vein. And just finding creators on YouTube and on Google who make vegan recipes, just kind of check those out. And I promise you, it's not difficult. I was a sophomore in college when I made the change, living on my own, doing my own grocery shopping. And it just took a little bit of experimentation, moving my hand a few inches over instead of buying like cow's milk, buying the soy milk or the almond milk or the oat milk, just trying different recipes and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And if I was able to do it at that point in my life, I think you can as well. So that's pretty much what I had to say. Do you have anything to add, Austin?
Yeah, and I had looked into nutrition. I was really into it before going vegan. So I had a good foundation, so to speak. I remember well, the day of going vegan, I just sort of ate whatever I had in the house, that wasn't, derived from animal products. But my next trip from the store, I bought all the same food. I ate every day, day in, day out, for years. The only difference being I found like the veggie patties instead of meat. I found like Gardein fish, which was great. Plant-based milk instead of cow's milk. So just swapped everything out, on that next trip. And it's so easy right now, more than ever to be vegan because this was 8 years ago. But anyone can go to their grocery store, keep their diet basically unchanged, and make these simple substitutions. And it's not going to be perfect dietarily speaking, but a person can obtain the same macros, most of the same micronutrients, get the same calories just by making these substitutions. And then it will basically be, a version of wherever someone's diet is at right now, but then without cholesterol, with less saturated fat. So a slightly improved version. But that's really the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to dietetics. Like that's really baseline. But I think it's a good starting point, and it can allow basically anyone to make the change really quickly. So it's not something you have to pace yourself doing or do over months or something or have an excuse. I mean, You can really do it on day one with the products that are available right now. So I would say do that. But I want everyone to be healthy, everyone to be happy, everyone to have optimal health. So do that, make the change, and I think people will really stack very important factors of health in their favor by strongly researching, by heavily researching diet and improving over time. But that's basically just the starting point. From there, you can get blood tests done to see where your vitamin levels are at, to see where your triglycerides are at, to get some sort of biometric data and really plan your diet in a more robust way. But if you just have a regular sort of plant-based diet using these mock foods, you can obtain really good health outcomes. If you look at the longest living population in the United States right now with the most centenarians, these are vegan Seventh day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. If you see documentaries or what they're doing as far as diet planning, it's nothing crazy, nothing complex. Just eating how you're probably eating right now with a bit more fruits and vegetables and some alternative, vegan meats, vegan milks thrown in there, and they're doing well, they're thriving. But Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Anything to add to what I said there?
Yeah, that's all really great, and I think it's going to be helpful to anyone watching who is interested about this. One thing I want to mention is a website called veganhealth.org. It's an amazing website that I forgot to mention earlier. It's written by two registered dietitians, and they go over every single nutrient and every single way to get those nutrients from vegan sources. So it can be a super helpful guide for especially, athletes, pregnant women. There's special articles for the different kind of, human that you are and the needs that you have. That's a really great website. And another thing I want to really emphasize is when it comes to going vegan, it's super important to nail in the why, because the how becomes really easy when you have a strong why for doing it. So when it comes to like transitioning your diet and thinking about, oh, this is going to be inconvenient, this is going to be hard, this is going to be like I have to do experimentation with foods I've never tried. You have to keep in perspective why you want to make the change. So it goes back to the documentaries and the videos that we described earlier. Just seeing these animals absolutely being tortured, having their basic rights violated, having their lives just taken from them just for human pleasure, human greed. If you put yourself in those animals' position and imagine yourself being oppressed and subjugated by someone stronger than you would want that to end. And it's up to each of us as individuals to recognize that and to really take seriously this issue. And when you really see that and you connect to that why, that the morality of making this change, it makes the how super easy to do. Like, because you've got fuel, for that fire, and that is what propelled me and Austin to make that change really quickly. For me in college, I'd say it was about a few weeks. When it came to trying out different recipes. There would be maybe like remnants of dairy in a certain product, but overall, I went from full blown meat eater to fully vegan, plant based in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And it doesn't even need to be that long. It's just kind of it took a second to fully click for me, but that's kind of something I wanted to add on. You have anything to say, Austin?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when the why is strong enough, the how just becomes like nothing. It becomes easy. It's just for me. I mean, it was like I was driven so much by seeing the reality of it. I knew I just couldn't continue perpetuating what I saw. So I would say if someone's watching this and they're on the fence about it or they're thinking about making the change, submerge yourself in the footage. Watch, Gary's speech. It's really impactful. And don't just like take someone's word for it. Actually see it for yourself. Watch the documentary Earthlings. Watch Dominion, released in 2018. and it shows the reality of every facet of animal agriculture, from dairy to wool to fishing. And it doesn't only show like the worst examples. It's not like propaganda or something. It shows the standard practices. So like imagine best case scenario, humane certified, RSPCA, free range, like whatever you envision in your mind as far as these facilities being like and as far as what's happening. I would say, see this to see it for yourself. Knowledge is power, and I think when it comes to how we interact with the other beings on the planet, there's no bigger interaction with them than what we buy, what we spend our money on as consumers. And whenever someone buys like meat or dairy or leather or fur, they see the end product, but they don't think about who was impacted in the process and exactly what happened. And a person will go their entire life eating many pounds of meat or buying many leather jackets or anything for that matter without seeing the reality. So just see it for yourself, educate yourself on it, and ask yourself, is that something that supporting is in line with my values? And if I was in the place of that animal, and I know it's hard for people to empathize with animals, but I know everyone seeing this can do it because I know you can empathize with a dog. If you saw someone harming a dog or kicking a dog or something, I think you would step in and protect them or call the police, something like that. But try to empathize with these animals and ask yourself if there's someone who can easily make this switch and buy a consumer good that's a few inches over, just reaching a bit over to the left or the right, what would you want these people or these beings to do if you were the one in the animal's place? And I think when you see it that way, it becomes extremely easy.
Yeah, man, for sure. And especially with the world that we live in now, where there's grocery stores, pretty much 90% plus of humans have access to these grocery stores, and all these alternatives for leather, faux leather products are really, really common. There's absolutely no excuse for continuing to exploit animals and violate their rights. We just live in a new world where we proclaim ourselves to be, civilized humans who are against oppression, against violence. We absolutely condemn the actions of Nazis and Nazi Germany, and we condemn brutal imperialism that may be going on today and in the past century. But then when we look at animal agriculture and its other sister industries that exploit animals, we're looking at trillions of innocent beings that are just being ruthlessly oppressed when it's completely unnecessary, and it just doesn't need to happen anymore. And in caveman days, fair enough, people had to survive. They just did what they did. But we're in a completely different world now, and it's really important to look at these documentaries. Like Austin was talking about, and that speech that he was talking about, Gary Yourofsky. If you look up his name on YouTube, he has a speech called "The Best Speech You Will Ever Hear," and that is actually the very video that committed me to going vegan and staying this way, and also becoming an activist as well. So I really recommend taking a look at that and cementing your why, and it really should come full circle for you.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. I think that's a really great starting point along with Dominion. But hey, that's all I have. Chris, if there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm really excited to start this podcast with you, and we could just talk about a bunch of subjects. We're looking at a weekly schedule for now, about 20, 30, 40 minutes each episode. Probably not upward to 40, but mostly 20, 30-minute episodes. And we can maybe go into more about ourselves in a later episode, just kind of talk about what we do, the things we're into, how we met, you know. That would be cool to talk about. But I feel like this is a pretty decent starting place just to kind of establish the direction of the podcast. And that's really all I got.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for viewing this. And hey, feel free to comment any thoughts, suggestions, feedback. We look forward to hearing it. And hey, Thank you. Episode 1 is a wrap.
Thank you for watching. Peace out.